Today on the Zoologist's Campfire, we have Sergé Bogaerts. Sergé is a senior advisor for environment and ecology at the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and the Environment. In that capacity, he helps to make the Netherlands more livable for many plants and animals, for instance, by defragmenting natural areas to give nature more space. But, more importantly for us, he is also a proficient herpetologist with about 50 publications and contributing to several books. And those are mostly on European and North African amphibians and reptiles. Sergé got a master's from Radboud University and has since traveled around Europe and the Mediterranean, chasing mostly salamanders and newts. Welcome, Sergé.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. So, before we get into your fantastic stories, it seems that herpetology is really a lifelong passion for you.
Yeah.
What is it that you love about herpetology?
Yeah, that's funny. I was actually walking in the field last week with somebody a young guy who asked me the same question. What started it? What started? I was thinking, the most first thing I remember is that I found a dead lizard when I was walking the dog when I was a kid. It wasn't Zootoca vivipara, I know now, of course, but it had orange colored belly, and all these small scales, and I could really look at it and watch it. I was like, "Ooh, this is nice. This is like a tiny dragon." That's what many people have the affection with, or like dinosaurs. And I was still too young to go into like the real adult books in the library store. So I had to ask my mother if I could walk with her, and she could pick out some books so she could borrow them, and I could look at books on reptiles and amphibians. And that started when I was 5 or 6 or something like that. It must have been at that period, and it never went away. I will stay a child.
What is it that never went away? I mean, I know Zootoca has these beautiful, tiny, granular scales. Yeah. It looks very refined. What is it that when you see an animal still today that
I think
does it?
It's a combination of two things. It's of course the colorful and beautiful structures that most of them have, and it's also a bit the secretive way of living that you have to work to see them. You cannot just walk around and like a bird, you can hear a bird and think, oh, that's the one. But most of these animals, you have to look and to find them at the right time or the right spot, or that makes them like more mysterious for me.
Yeah.
But another factor that's very important, I learned, is that you can really catch them. You can get up close to them, and you can watch them from all sides, and that makes it more closer than mammals or birds, which you always have to watch from a distance or have to have difficult techniques to catch them. But this you can do yourself. You can go with a dip net and try to catch a newt. And
yeah.
As a kid, I've made many hours trying to catch a newt before I learned that the trick is to go at night or with a flashlight, or the stuff you don't learn when you are young, but what you learn by doing or by meeting other people who tell you that, this is something you have to do different because this is much easier.
yeah.
And
there's a lot
still,
of those
like vipers. That's a group of animals that, I'm 55 years old now. I still have a lot of problems finding vipers, but I'm learning. That's
and it's amazing to go with the people who can find them immediately.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. It's fascinating to go with a specialist who can tell you, but now you're already too late. Why? Yeah, well, it's too warm. But the sun has just started. Yeah, but it's too warm already. Okay. So that's really that's what you have to learn, and that's of course with reptiles and amphibians very interesting that every species has its own niche and time and place, and and the overlap is rarely, it's rarely combines. And well, that's of course what you learn also when you want to go into the field. And what I did last decades, searching for animals, it's, well, you try to book, let's see, April, that should be a right month. That week, and well, you have to book, because you cannot say we go tomorrow.
That's the problem.
You prepare, and you and you go there, and then, oh, okay, it's still too cold, probably. And what we gonna do now? So yeah, that's what happens a lot, of course. That you just have to plan in ahead.
Yeah, you have to be lucky. Yeah. Yeah, I once planned a very poorly, for one of the first times I went to Morocco, I poorly planned the trip. It was too hot, but for some reason the first rain came. We saw more reptiles and amphibians there than any herpetologist had ever seen in that area.
Exactly, yeah. And that's also what makes it nice as well, that you can get surprised by having good luck, that somebody else didn't have the right time or whatever. And you are at the same place where many people have been, and everybody says, no, that's a horrible spot, but then you go there at the right time, and then you find many animals. Then you feel really lucky. That's
awesome. Yeah. And so you've been everywhere. You've been all over Europe and Turkey and around the Mediterranean, and had many adventures. So let's get into one of them. Where are you taking us first?
Well, I was thinking, Turkey was my first love, more or less, because it's I did my my major course for when I was on university. I did in Turkey. There were no salamanders involved, by the way, because they were not there. I did my PhD study on the herpetofauna of the Göksu Delta near the Taşıcı. That's west of Adana, about 200 kilometers. So it's along the coast. There are sea turtles and a lot of nice birds, and of course many reptiles and amphibians. And because you spend there 5 months, you learn a little bit about the culture, very little bit about the language. It's a complicated language, at least for me. And that was that's a country that got fascinated. That I find fascinating because there was so little known. It's like there wasn't in the beginning of the 90s, so there were a lot of species were virtually unknown, or just few distribution records. And then you can think, okay, well, we can go there and try to find new spots, or we can try to. So that's what we did in the beginning of the zeros, more or less, a few times.
Okay.
And at the end of the 90s, we started with Likia salamander.
Yeah.
And there was a group working on that already, so we could just say, okay, well, we go there as well, and we collect new distribution data, and you can do the publications or whatever, or we can measure animals and stuff like that. Because it was, at least in those days, but it still is that a lot of these very simple basic data, like how big are they, how much do they weigh, when is the activity period, how much young do they get, stuff like that. Basic ecological data is virtually unknown, besides distribution or besides population dynamics or whatever, because it's even much more complicated data.
So you guys packed up and decided to go
up and say, okay, well, this is nice area, a nice period. Just rent a car, go there, and then of course you get into all kinds of adventures and troubles and stuff, because especially in Turkey, those days, the east of Turkey was very complicated, and still is complicated because of the Kurdish conflict with the Turkish government. So every year it was like, okay, let's see how far we can get east until the military sent us back.
Oh, right.
And sometimes you were lucky, and then you got past the post, and then in the next post it was like, but how did you get here? Yeah, well, we just drove this road, and they said we could go there. Yeah, but it's impossible to go here, and you have to have a permission, and then you spend a half day on a military concern, and then the general tried to explain you that it's really, really dangerous to go there, and you should not come here, and that they sent you back, and all kinds of stuff.
So you had to wait for the general to show up
yeah,
to tell you
yeah,
this.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We had it a few times, especially in the beginning of the zeros,
So how does that
2001.
go? You have to get out of your car.
Yeah,
These
yeah,
guys,
yeah, yeah, yeah. They stop
soldiers
you,
with
and of course
guns.
they start with give me a passport and give me your driver license and the papers
Mm-hmm.
of the car, and so that's how it started. And of course, these militaries are, they are young guys. They don't know anything. They just know, okay, this is something weird.
Yeah.
Foreign guys, and oh, they all have cameras, and they have all this gear with them. What are they going to do here? So it looks very suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you don't realize when you're young. You're like, okay, we go there. What can happen? It's Turkey. It's not a conflict. It's not in war or whatever. But it was, of course, a difficult situation, and we even had problems that we were like guarded, and they said, okay, you can go there, but we will call this hotel, and you have to go to that hotel. And then when we arrived at the hotel, there was people waiting for us. We could not leave the hotel at that night, so we should stay there. And in the morning, we were accompanied again by the militaries to drive out of the village.
Oh wow!
Because apparently this village was a difficult situation, and yeah, of course you cannot see that, and you don't know that. You cannot collect these data here. When you go there, you're just like, okay, we drive that route. That seems nice, through the mountains, so we can catch all these streams. And then you end up like that. But it's not. It was always friendly, It was not
okay.
like they were harassing you or whatever. It's just like, okay.
But I imagine it can be a bit impressive. I mean, these are soldiers with guns, and they tell you to do stuff.
Yeah, and especially when you come from Europe, it's like, okay, Turkey's not that different from Europe. I mean, of course, it's a different culture, but in general, many people go to Turkey, but of course they go to Istanbul or go to Antalya. They don't go to the east.
No.
It was most of the times also we flew to, Ankara or whatever, because there was the cheapest flight, and then you rent a car there, and they were already asking you where you go. Yeah, we go to the east. To the east? Nobody goes to the east. You are a tourist. You have to go to the coast. No, we want to go to the east. Yeah, but there's nothing in the east.
Well,
yeah, there are nice animals there in the east. Okay. Have you been to the east? No. We don't have. We never go to the east.
Wow. Okay. That bad.
Yeah.
That must have, harmed your confidence already a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it of course, but like you're young and you think like, come on, we're in this country. It's the same country.
Yeah.
We can travel and you can travel a lot, but then there comes a point and they say, from this point on, you have to go back because the situation changes every year, and that was the complicated stuff with it.
I see. Yeah,
so, and in the beginning, we did it just by ourselves, and then after 2-3 years, we thought, we should have a Turkish guy with us because it's too complicated to do it like this. But most herpetologists were in West. So we tried to search for at least a biologist to accompany us in the field work, and then we ended up with a guy from Diyarbakir University.
Yeah,
he was an ornithologist, but he was like, "Oh, okay, I don't know anything about reptiles and amphibians, but I'm really, really, really enjoying field work, and I want to learn. So let's go together." And that helped a lot, of course. That helped.
Yeah,
but even for him, it was for some areas it was impossible to come because then the military decides, of course, if an area is safe or not. So then you can be a professor at the university, but they don't care.
Yes. Yeah. And were you ever able to convince a general to let you through, or?
Yeah, well. There was one general that was near Biologist, which is far east near the Van Lake Van. He was very into football. We are not, but still, and a few names, and then he's really happy. And he was doing a course in France, and he was just learning a bit of French, so he wanted to practice with us. And Frank Pasmans was with us. That's a guy who I do most of these travels with, and he's Belgium, so he could speak a little bit better French than I do. So they were practicing French, and in one way or another that helped a lot. And he was like, okay, these guys are not so dangerous, and that helps, of course. And like, yeah, what are you looking for? And then we showed the pictures of the animals, and he was like, oh yeah, but we've seen them here on the terrain, and we were like, of course, like, oh, can we search here? No, you cannot search here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay,
and
works.
it's always if you behave friendly and if you don't feel offended, most of the times you get through. That's more, of course, you don't have to be the arrogant Western guy who thinks he has all the wisdom in his pocket, because you don't. You're a guest in the country, so that's the only thing you can do is be friendly and polite. Try to explain, and then they are like, okay, yeah, we find it suspicious, but still, okay, you can get through, or you cannot get through. That's,
yeah. And then you were just scratching that part of the trip, I guess.
Yeah. We always that's also a part of it. You plan. We didn't plan a lot most of the time. We just thought like, okay, at home we tried to decide a route more or less that you can do within 1-2 weeks, depending on the time we had, and depending on the information we had. Of course, we tried to combine some stuff. Sorry.
No worries.
And then you have to adjust your plans in the field. And we really wanted to, and in that case, in these years we were busy with Ragus strauchi, which was
beautiful little salamander.
Yes, beautiful mute, and it was very little known. There were just a few distribution records, so we were like, okay, but here's one, there's one. Okay, there should be in between as well, and around the other ones, you can try to make circles and look for other suitable streams. So you have to be in the breeding season, because that's the easiest part, and they're in the streams. And you can. That's a good part thing as well of them. You can search them by day, because they are active at day as well. Not as much as at night, but still you can do that.
So I've never seen this. I've seen them alive, but I've never seen them in the wild. Obviously, I've never been to Turkey. Yeah. So they just swim in the stream. So how do you find them?
Just walk around in the slow moving part. So it's really incredible, because at daytime you don't expect a colorful newt walking around in the stream.
No,
acting like, okay, I'm just. But apparently their warning colors are good enough to protect them from predators to protect them during the day. So that's. But at night, of course, like with fire salamanders or other amphibians, at night they are much more active. But you can easily find them during the day, and that makes searching, of course, a lot easier as well, because then during the day we could just check all these streams and walk along the streets, and because they are so colorful, you can also ask people. You show the picture, and they cannot mistake it for something else. They can mistake it for perhaps a fire salamander for that, but that was also okay, because we just these two species were very interesting. So it doesn't really depend if it was to be a fire salamander or it was an Oregus. And it was like that. It was like they knew the animals, and we were like, it's a bit strange. It doesn't seem exactly a spot for an Oregus.
Okay.
And of course, it turned out to be a fire salamander spots.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So people do. Very recognizable species, that one. That's beautiful.
Exactly. And
is that your favorite species now, or?
Yeah, that's fire salamanders have always been my favorite group of animals through the years, and it has not changed. That's I've done, of course, studies in Morocco with David Dornaire on salamander algae and Wouter Beukema also. We did a lot of things together there, trying to collect more data on ecology, but also of course on the taxonomy, because it's a weird situation there. Yeah, it stays the most interesting group. Because,
okay.
And what I liked as well, because that's how, of course, as a child, I also kept animals in captivity. The good thing about these animals, you can easily study them in captivity as well. I mean, they don't. You don't have to have very complicated systems to keep them. You just have to keep them at the right temperature and clean them once a week, and then you can easily keep them more or less. They don't breed like rats, that's not the easy part, but that's still an interesting thing. You can do that at home. You can keep them. You can see how many larvae they get per female. That's data which is very difficult to collect in the wild, but very easy to collect in captivity. So that combination of studying animals in captivity with the field data, seeing them in the field and collecting data there, that makes it very interesting for me.
So you get a really complete picture if you live with the animals at home as well.
Yeah. And of course, many new questions as well, like in any scientific research that you do.
And then you have to plan your next trip to answer that question, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. So it keeps you busy, and that's good. For me, that's very good because, as you told me, I work for the Ministry of Infrastructure. So my normal day job is a lot of paperwork. We do environmental impact assessments and stuff like that, especially on nature and nature protection laws, like impact on Natura 2000 areas or protected species. But I don't go into the field. That's what the bureaus, they do the work for that.
Yeah.
But most of the stuff that I do is just paperwork. So for me, going out into the field is of course a nice change of work.
And you do a lot of that. Have you ever found yourself in a dangerous situation or no risky place?
I must say not really dangerous. We had I must say that we went to Syria in 2009. That was just before the war. We, of course, nobody expected to get this country into war. But we planned it together with Max Parboom and I was Bart Pasmans again. And it was not easy to get into that country. You had to have permission on forehand. You had to have an invitation from the government. And because of Max's work for the Erasmus Society in the Netherlands, he had some connections with the Dutch embassy representative there. And that started more or less like, okay, can we try to get an invitation to Syria to do some field work there? And that worked. And of course, then you also have to have somebody to help you there, to get with you in the field. And through some Jordanese herpetologists, we got into contact with a Syrian herpetologist. But more or less a week before, I will go with you, no problem, etc., etc. But about a week before that we departed, so everything was arranged. He said, "Well, I cannot go with you," and we were like, "Oh, that's a big problem." But I got a replacement, and she's very nice and she knows a lot. And we were like, "Ooh, a woman going away a week with 3 Western guys,
yes,
that could be a problem. I don't think she will, in that culture and in our culture would be, it would be a little bit strange to do that. But it all worked out perfectly. We had to give presentations on the University of Damascus. So we were presenting our research and we were presenting what we wanted to do and why Syria was so interesting and that there was so little known and etc. She helped us with translating the PowerPoint, etc. And she went with us into the field and it was really, really nice. It was really, really nice. She was working on a gamete, but it wasn't. I don't think it was really her topic. More or less, like that
Big lizards,
like a herpetologist, but she found it very interesting, and it was a great trip. We discovered a lot of new localities, of course, because nothing was known more.
Yeah, not many people have gone there.
So I was really looking forward to, okay, this was our first trip. Hopefully we can get back very soon, and we can get now and then the war started, and
yeah,
it was like,
it was very difficult to get in, and a lot of problems. You had to do a lot of things. But once you were there, did you feel like it was a dangerous place? Or?
No, not at all. Not at all. No, it was really, people were very friendly. The only thing that you noticed is that there was like, a secret police everywhere.
Okay.
Checking what you were doing, but that's why this woman, Arup Al-Rasli, was very important, because she could say, okay, but they are under my guidance, and we have the paperwork, etc.
Yeah.
So it was really, really. It was the first, and still with me, the first Islamic country where I saw that they were building a church.
Oh.
So, in many countries you can see that there are churches, still Christian churches or whatever, stuck back somewhere in the corner, or there's some, but they were building a new church for Christians alongside a mosque, I must say. But it was like, okay, this is a complete, of course, it's a dictatorship, but still that it happens that they're building something new for Christians was really a surprise for me. I'm not religious at all, so I ignore most of these things when I'm in the field, or I don't plan to. But it was like, okay, that's interesting. That's yeah.
Huh. But at least they have the freedom to do that, and
exactly.
Yeah,
that was the point. And well, I never expected that. Of course, I never expected that it would become a country that was so destroyed as it is by now.
Yeah.
I'm still in good contact, by the way, with Arup. So I still hope one day, when there is more peace, we can go back again. But, I am really, I don't think it will be getting easier in that corner.
And was there something particular that you wanted to see there? Like this animal, I have to see.
Yeah. Well, it was mainly focused on fire salamander on one hand. And on Omatotryton vitatus on the other hand, because those species were, we knew, of course, they are in the south of Turkey and they are in Lebanon, so they should be in between. But where are they? And what populations are they? What kind of habitats do they use? And it's interesting also from evolution point of view, because somewhere there is a splitting going on. We know that in southern Turkey, some animals are genetically more related to animals from Syria, or at least we thought that should be. But of course, you have to have DNA to prove it. And, that was also one of the reasons to go there, to try and collect DNA all over the area. And it's still used. I mean, for the Omatotryton, it's used by Ben Wielstein and friends. And the DNA is used in papers by Miguel Vences and students of it. So, because of course that's what I cannot do. I mean, I don't have a lab with me, or I don't have anything. But when you do this kind of field work, you can collect easily data for others, and of course that's also what we try to do. I mean, and that's the fun part as well for me. I mean.
It totally is. I spend a lot of time in the lab processing
exactly.
the samples for people like you.
Do that, it's perfectly fine with me. I will collect the DNA. You can do that part of the.
I was terribly jealous of all the people who got to collect these exotic things. I just be in the lab, analyzing away.
Yeah. No, dude, I agree. I mean, the fun part is really to be in the field, for me at least. I don't. Of course, you have to write papers as well, but that's not the fun part for me. It's that's too much. That looks too much like my real work.
Paperwork. Yeah.
Awesome. But that's also when I was when I finished my university degree. It was like, okay, do I want to become a professional biologist or not? And I remember I was speaking to Josef Schmidtler from Munich on a meeting somewhere, and he was like, "Wow, the best thing to do is just to get a good job that pays well, and then you can afford yourself to do all these nice trips, and then you can do whatever you want." At least that's what I did, what we did most of the time. And it was like, yeah, that's perhaps not really a bad idea. On the other hand, I was also not good enough. I'm not a real hardcore scientist. I mean, I don't have the brains for it, or the attention. I don't know. I can do a lot of things, but I'm not a real hardcore scientist. So this way, working together with people who are much more intelligent than I am, or know much more about genetics, or much more about other techniques or statistics or whatever, like you talked in the last podcast with, that helps a lot, and that's also makes it more interesting, because I learn a lot from other people. They benefit from that I do field work. So collaborations are all over the place.
Yeah. I know it's the specialist for everything, and I mean,
yeah, exactly.
I'm specialized in biomechanics. I know nothing about statistics, honestly. Only what I need to know. So what would be on your bucket list to see around the world in terms of animals? Which one did you really go?
I started, of course, the fire salamanders. I want to see all the fire salamanders, all the salamanders of all the subspecies. I want to see at least in the field. And that was more or less like, that's more or less like the horizon. And that is more or less.
Because just to give the background, there's the fire salamander is one species, but there's a lot of forms and colors.
That's a lot of of course. I forget about the public that's listening to this.
Not everybody knows this.
Everybody knows about fire salamander. Now, there's there's a few species, of course. We have one species in North Africa, one in Corsica, one in Europe, then 2 alpine species in Europe, and there is a Middle East species. So that's distributed in Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Iraq, and Iran. And Iraq and Iran we don't know much about, so that would be interesting as well to do more field work. But especially on the Iberian Peninsula, variety is huge.
Yes.
It's still a question why that is, of course, but it's huge. So you have many subspecies, about 7 or 8 on the Iberian Peninsula. And what's interesting as well is that all these subspecies mix as well. So you have all these different coloration forms, which also mix and then form another coloration form, which looks morphologically completely different. But most of the times it's just, like a hybrid population. But when you love colorful black and yellow, orange, reddish kind of animals, then that's the place to be. So that makes it very interesting. And what I find very interesting as well is that you have these Mediterranean populations which behave different than, of course, the Middle Europe populations, which behave more or less like general amphibians. They have hibernation period, and in spring they produce the larvae. In this case, they don't produce eggs; they produce larvae or young, and then they have summer rest, and then But in the Mediterranean, they are more dependent on these rains because they are active when it rains, and then the streams and the ponds develop. So that's the period when they produce their larvae. Of course, in Morocco, you should expect that it's more or less the same way as in the Middle East, but it's not. They behave the same way, but the species look completely different. So in Morocco, the fire salamanders have become very slender, not so huge animals. They produce very few larvae, up to 30 or something. Whereas in the Middle East, the animals have become very big most of the times. And produce large clutches, about up to 100 larvae.
Oh, wow.
So it's a complete different system. And that's one thing that really fascinates me, why under similar circumstances you have completely different ecological forms, which also look very different because these Middle East ones, they are very plump and big, and they're huge animals. They are up to 30 centimeters, which is huge for a fire salamander.
Yeah, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's really That's
well,
really,
that puts them on my bucket list now, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really well. We were in Israel a few years ago, and we were completely wrong period. But of course, we just had to book, and we're like, okay, well, let's go to this area. We just try to find one because it's not raining, but perhaps one is so crazy enough to walk around. And yes, of course, it was. And then you see an animal, like 28 centimeters. That's really crazy. Yeah, that's really crazy. Yeah.
So that was the one that was on the top of your bucket list, because that's
that was one on top of the bucket list because it's so enigmatic, and on the Israeli populations, so many publications have been done, so many studies have been done by Degani and Mendelssohn, and that's also inspiring because when you read these publications, you're like, wow, that looks interesting. That looks like an interesting ecological phenomenon. How does it work? I want to see it in the field.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to different forms in the same, I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat, evolutionarily speaking, right? So
yeah.
Different strategies work. Yeah.
Exactly. Apparently, that strategy works better there because it's million years old. So it's evolved and it has worked out perfectly in that way. They have tried different things, and that's also interesting about Morocco. That in the northern part of Morocco, you have salamanders that keep their larvae just long enough into the body that they are already metamorphosed. So they produce like almost tiny salamanders. That sometimes you can see a little bit of gills, but most of the time these gills are gone already. And apparently, and that's what your Portuguese colleagues have found out, that this evolution from producing larvae to producing completely metamorphosed young can happen very quickly, because it happened also on Portuguese coastal islands, which they know were connected to the mainland just 10,000 years ago. Yeah. So in 10,000 years, which is on the human scale, it's a lot, but on the salamander scale, it's probably not. A lot of things can happen. And of course, that's really, I really find that fascinating, that species can adapt so quickly to new circumstances, because there was no fresh water anymore on the island, so they're completely dry. That's the same thing in north of Morocco. There are no streams. So these animals have evolved in, then we don't have streams anymore. Well, we will keep our larvae a little bit longer in the body, and we'll wait until they got metamorphosed. That's fascinating. Yeah.
So there must be some variety in that
character. And there must be variety, and probably there's still animals who are probably earlier or later, and that's also what these Israeli biologists have studied, that there is two kinds of strategy. You have females that produce the larvae very early in the season, so the first rains, then they produce the larvae, and if they're lucky enough, these larvae will survive. If these first rains are not good enough, and the ponds dry out again, well, bad luck, But what happens? Sorry, I'm still suffering from a cold.
No worries.
It's winter. It's the end of the winter.
Yeah.
But what happens in Israel is so that if you are an early producer, your larvae are the first ones, you can live from the smaller larvae that were produced a few weeks later. And what happens there is that you get cannibalistic larvae.
Yeah.
So larvae that more or less live on their siblings, and that also happens in other parts. Fire salamander larvae do eat each other when there's too little food in their habitat.
I think also tiger salamanders do something similar.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's a phenomenon this cannibalistic predation on siblings that happens all over the world. So well, it's fascinating to see. Yeah.
Apparently, it's good food to eat your.
Yeah, well, it's the perfect food. There are many snakes that eat other snakes because, of course, in a snake is the same products that you have to fulfill your body than in another snake. So.
But the problem is always that you get the same parasites as well. So that's
the
disadvantage. But to get back to your specific adventures, do you want to take us to another place or?
Well, we've also as you said, we tried. I tried to go to all places where there are salamanders and newts. So we've also been to Tunisia a few times. And at that time, there was also, it's the beginning of the zeros. It was still very easy to go to Tunisia. And Tunisia was like a touristic country. And it still is, I think. But it's getting more complicated because of all the governmental changes. But you could easily go there. And there is this newt, this ripped newt, which was also, there was hardly anything known about it. And so we were like, okay, well, let's try to go there. Yeah. And there was also still a question mark about if there would be fire salamanders in Tunisia, yes or not.
Oh, that's a big question. I mean,
that's a big question, of course. Yeah. And of course, as well, it's very difficult to prove that a species is not there.
Yes.
So you can only try to combine, specific data and information, and to say more or less like, okay, we have a theory that it's not there, and we have these reasons. And we visited the area a few times, especially in the winter time, of course, because that's the active period. And with the newts, it was like they should be everywhere, but and rain has started, so there were ponds.
Before you go, so how does it go? So you just book your flight for when you think it's good.
Yeah.
Do you camp in the field? Do you so you rent a car and you camp in the field, or?
No, most of depended on the period we went. When we were young, we camped in the field. When we got a little bit more money, we were really like, okay, book a hotel.
But I'm in that camp too, I have to say.
And now it's more or less, well, of course, you can just look on the internet and see, is there a hotel or not? And okay, what does it cost? Let's see. But most of the times, especially now, we most of the time book a hotel.
Right.
Of course, it has a disadvantage that if you want to go out into the field, you have to travel in the evening and you have to travel back, and that sometimes that's complicated, but most of the times it works. And there are always, in the most dodgy places, there are places to sleep. So
yes,
if you ask around, and that's the advantage for Tunisia or Morocco, you can use your French, or you can use, so you can always find out something. In Turkey, it was much more complicated. In Turkey, there is a system, and that's interesting, for teachers to sleep in villages and stuff like that, because teachers get sent out throughout the country.
Okay.
And that's what this professor from university knew. He knew that these places were there, and he could just ask there and to have a place to sleep. Okay, but still, go back to Tunisia. So we went to Tunisia to try A, to see if there was fire salamanders, and B, to do something on these ripped newts. Well, these ripped newts were not so complicated in the end, because it's just like Spanish ripped newts. They use more or less every space that you can imagine. You just have to find them. So and because we are in the beginning of the breeding season, there are no larvae, there are no eggs. You have to find the adults, and if they are not in the water, where can they be? Probably on the land, probably somewhere hidden. But where then? So then you have to turn all kinds of stuff. And in the end, it turned out there was a ditch. And in one of these ditches, we found one.
Only one?
It was a ditch in an agricultural area. It was looking horrible, not really interesting for amphibians. But they cleaned out the ditch, and there were these heaps of clay lying on the edge of the ditch. So we were like, okay, we can try to turn these heaps of clay and see if there are newts in there. And that was the case. So we were turning over, and we collected about 20, and we're like, okay, now we have a group of 20 animals, we can measure them, and we,
Yeah.
Sometimes you really get surprised by an animal, and well, you invent something that you can try to find it.
So with your, and with your fellow travelers, lots of experience with rib newts, you didn't expect them to be there at all.
No. It was not look. You expect, but for an amphibian, you have to have a good breeding habitat, and you have to have a good land habitat, and especially for rib newts, you expect at least to be, a little bit of variety or woodland or whatever, the thing.
Yeah. I mean, some nature around, right?
Exactly, some nature around. But in this case, it was completely barren agricultural area. It was completely, for me at least, was like, okay, there was also nothing to hide beside these heaps of clay. So it was logical that if they were there, then they should be there. But still, you wouldn't expect them at all.
So if you would have gone completely on your experience, you would not have even looked. Maybe.
No, exactly. If we hadn't found the first one in the water, we would have said, okay, this is completely useless habitat.
Yeah.
So that's where you can go wrong as well. If you have to be lucky sometimes to find one individual, and that gives you a hint about, okay, we're right now. We are on the right spot. And now.
and the other goal of the trip?
Yeah, the other goal was fire salamanders. And we did two things with that. We knew that they are in Algeria. So you go closest to the border with Algeria, and there's a nice oak forest there.
Yeah.
It was like, there. Why? Could be possible. So we searched for the streams. We found bufo there, so we knew, okay, then could be suitable for salamanders as well.
There must be water, yeah.
And we went there a few times, never found anything. So no dead animals on the road, no activity at night, no larvae. And then we thought, okay, we can try another thing, and just to ask some shepherds. Because again, it's a black and yellow animal, you cannot mistake it. So we showed a few shepherds pictures of animals, like, we showed a turtle, we showed a chameleon, we showed a timon, which is already dodgy because they can mistake it for something else, perhaps, a big lizard, but still, it's a big green lizard. So with snakes, we don't do that kind of stuff because they mistake snakes all the time. But chameleon, for instance, is also a species. If you have seen it once, you cannot mistake it much with something else. And he really pointed out, oh, yeah, turtles were there. Oh, yeah, chameleons, he knew. Black and yellow salamander, no. It was like, no, never seen it. And that's already, of course, you don't, if they say yes, then it becomes more complicated because sometimes they just want to say yes to please you,
Yes,
if they say resolutely no, that is very valuable to me because they feel all the time. And they know if they are there or not. And and that was another funny story. When we went to Turkey, we thought, okay, we could use a little bit of Turkish words. And Turkish word for salamander is samander.
Oh.
So we often asked samander. And they looked like you like, what on earth are they talking about? And especially my friend Tony Lucas, he was like, salamander war, and war is, are there salamanders here? And we're always like, okay.
Yeah. And it's a weird question in any language.
Yeah, it's a weird question, of course, because it's cultural. You already expect them to distinguish a salamander from something else. Which, of course, many Europeans cannot even distinguish a salamander from a lizard. So it's a stupid question. And that's when we found out, of course, that Turkish people, they call a salamander a rain lizard. That's what they say. So if you ask them for a rain lizard, then they know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
That's of course, if you know that, then you have a conversation. So that's yeah. You have to experience that. You cannot know that, and that's why it's also important. And that's what we learned, of course, through years as well, to have somebody local with you, or at least have them have some local experience and know some words, because that helps you a lot to get.
Yeah, but I found that there's also some regional variation in the words used.
Also, and especially in Turkey with the Kurdish area, it's of course it's different. And when you talk to real Kurdish people, they sometimes don't even speak Turkish. So and also in Morocco, you have the Amazigh, which have a different language. And if you talk to a shepherd, which is not educated at all most of the time, he just talks his local language. And then pictures help, of course. Yeah. But if you know a word that they use, that helps a lot.
Yeah. Awesome. What's the next trip planned?
The World Congress.
Okay. Borneo. Yeah. Oh, that's a nice one. Not too bad.
Yeah, I've never been to a World Congress, so I always go to the European Herpetology Congresses because, well, that's where you meet the people where you have email contact with through the years, and to hear about the new stories and the latest discoveries in real life, which is really, really nice. But I've never been to a World Congress. Most of the time I thought, wow, it's too much, it's too big. And, but I thought, well, I should go. And then this, of course, Borneo is a good idea.
It's not too shabby. Yeah.
It's not too shabby. It's, of course, it's expensive, but still,
Yeah.
But sadly, no salamanders and no newts there. So I just have to look at something else.
Yes. Oh, I'm sure you can entertain yourself there.
Yeah, there's a lot, and that's the advantage of going to, and then it's also, of course, it's just holiday. Everything is nice. Everything is new. That makes it a lot easier. Also, there's no scientific goal for us. It's just enjoying some of the wildlife there. Yeah.
And talking to other herp freaks.
Yeah.
If people want to find out more about you or want to follow you online or something, do you have a online presence that we should advertise here?
Oh, that's a good idea. Well, you can find me on Facebook. That's the easiest part because I only use my Facebook account more or less only for herpetological stuff. I don't post my cats or dogs or anything else, or family business, or I don't have much of a family business either. So it's not very complicated life that I have. But on Facebook, it's the easiest part. And you can always email me, of course, if you want any publication. I'm on ResearchGate.
ResearchGate. Okay, we'll link that as well.
I tried to open an ORCID link as well, so I will publish there my lists of stuff.
Well, we'll put those links in with this podcast, so people can find you.
That's good. Yeah, and of course, there are still, you asking me still, of course, there's still a lot of goals. I would love to go to Iran or to Iraq or, still there are still countries that I've never visited. I want to go back to Syria. Lebanon is also very interesting. There's a very nice guy working there now, a hobbyist doing a lot of nice stuff. Would be interesting to go there with him, do some field work with salamanders. But there's still a lot to do.
Good. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Then we expect a lot from you.
That's a good thing. You never get bored like this. Of course, because it's not my daily job, I spread it out, and sometimes projects can take years. But that's no problem either. Yeah.
Good. Well, we'll be looking forward to those next publications then.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Thanks, Sergé. Thanks a lot for being on the podcast, and hopefully talk to you again soon.
Yeah, hopefully soon. You go to the Herpetological Congress in Borneo, or
not this time? Not this time. I'm afraid not.
Yeah. Well, it's a shame. Yeah. Well, we'll see you. I'll see you for sure somewhere else.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.